Greetings, ladies and metallurgists, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Tanks, written by Phillipsburg. The war between the dwarves and elves had been going on for decades, with many more years before a victory between either would be possible. That, of course, didn't stop both sides' leaders from boasting about their sure victory over the other. The dwarves, using physical attacks and anti-magic defenses, held up in strongholds deep beneath the surface. The elves lived in magical trees, which greatly boosted the magic of even their weaker civilians to fight like a soldier. However, the war changed when humans entered the fray. Originally, magic barriers blocked humans from living permanently near elven territories under the disguise of national parks and dense forests. But the Elven Council was soon surprised when human soldiers stepped foot in their magically enchanted land, offering support. The Elven Council, petty and greedy, lured the human representatives to a prison where they were tortured for information on how they got in. The representatives only laughed and told him they expected the response before teleporting away by pressing a crystal in his pocket the guards didn't find. Elves. This had horrified the Elven Council, as their best mages inscribed millennia-old runes that prevented even the strongest of mages to teleport in the sacred halls of the council, let alone bring in a crystal of power. But they would sort this matter out later, for they knew the Dwarven forces was encroaching on one of their new cities and would soon crush it without proper force to stop them. Dwarves. The Dwarven king had originally liked the humans when they first met on the surface before they went to attack an elven city on the war front because of their many flavors of spirits and mead. But he laughed at their tanks' metals, using only surface ores for armor, and ordered the human soldiers to be executed for his pleasure. His laughter, however, was cut short as a bullet ripped through his refined and decorated armor, piercing his arm. His guards were swift to defend him, and while the king retreated, he was mad with rage as his army clashed. The Dwarven king grew angrier and angrier as the humans toppled his army, and even the king's guards, like their metals, were wood from a tree. He had trained under his master, and his master before him to make the strongest metals and refine them tenfold in the forges, and yet they were winning. He decided to flank around the human forces and take the city while destroying the humans' back flank in a diabolical move. As his army charged from the depths and caves and forts to the side of the human army, he could see the Elven Council making a magical sigil in the sky. He despised magic, as metal was clearly stronger in every way, and his hatred for it lured him into the city, even if he would be sandwiched by pathetic humans and elven forces. Elves. The Elven Council knew the dwarves were fast approaching, but their sigil of destruction was close to being finished. He was gleeful as he saw the black steel armor of the Dwarven King's guards in the path of the magical beam that would soon be his downfall. However, the sigil soon broke as the sky broke into fire and light. Explosions of great magnitude were happening all over the city as thousands of year-old buildings crumbled and bridges strained under the advance of the human armada. The High Priestess entered the council's sanctum, heaving and fuming. They should have her executed for such a blasphemous appearance in their court, but they'd hear her words, even if it was just for a few moments. As it turns out, the humans had created magical golems with wheels and strange wands to shoot death and rain fire on their forces. The tank, the humans called it. Dwarves. His army crumbled, unlike anything the elves had ever done, even on their strongest days. The human forces had not just magic wands, like the elves, but mechanical beasts that generated explosions and flames anywhere they looked. They were appalled by the use of both metal and magic, especially such basic metals. The Dwarven King charged towards the machine to destroy the pathetic armor that they had shown him before. His great axe struck the metal armor of the beast before shattering into pieces as an elven sigil of destruction flared on the tank's side where it struck, and he exploded. Elves. The Elven Council was pleased with the turn of events as the sigil roared to life with the final ritual completed. Their largest sigil of destruction shot a beam of divine light to destroy everything in its path. Both the dwarves and the humans were fighting right in the wake of their beam and would surely die. However, the council was shocked at the aftermath. Dwarf-like beasts of metal and even foot soldiers were alive. His forces were crushed by his own offense, the price he had to pay to defend the sigil. It turns out the humans had metals that halted their attack, and their foot soldiers crawled out of their holes of metal and magical seals. He was in shock at the sight, and worried on what he would do next. However, his brain didn't have time to think as a bullet ripped apart his skull and horrified the lesser leaders in the council. They started to run like chickens, but one by one they fell. Humans. The dwarves and the elves had been fighting for a great time, but human governments had only recently discovered the presence of elves on their soil, let alone battles raging across their own cities. Scientists from nations originally at odds worked together to learn the ways the two fought and refine it to their own way to fight. It wasn't long that a scientist figured out that runes could be inscribed on metal and not just stone, creating a much more powerful magical barrier. He'd used it to make a desk lamp that wouldn't need a cord. They learned to inscribe tanks' armors with runes to protect the tanks from the inside and use offensive sigils on the outside to stop enemies from piercing the armor. Tank shells were enhanced to increase their effect against armor of the dwarves, pierced shields of the elves, and destroyed both equally under the wrath of the human government. They created pocket dimensions from elven bags to allow soldiers to throw down mini portable bunkers to withstand even the hardest of attacks. Their new trinkets guaranteed victory over the elves and the dwarves, but peace was always a better option. Their delegates escaped in the nick of time with runes of teleportation, first teleported into their pockets after they got searched, and used later to escape the greedy clutches of the Dwarven King and their Elven Council. The rune of teleportation was first re-engineered and used as infinite trash can that chucked trash from the office into the sun. Aftermath. The human government didn't enjoy their swift victory and was saddened by their new race's hostile governments, but that wouldn't matter. Despite the protests of some people, of the dwarven civilians and elves were allowed to live peacefully as long as they lived under the rule of the human government, unified under the threat of dwarven and elven walls on their doorstep. It took time, longer, for the elves to grow into human society, and soon they were unrecognizable from human counterparts. The battle only took 3 hours. End of story. Story number 2. The Wrong Hostage, written by SlowAD 2584. Reaver Captain Ting Tang, oof, how's this thing work again? I am proud to report we have successfully kidnapped a human for ransom. Oh, have you now? Tell me, War Chief, but this thing looks scary. Was this man someone important? Is he someone that we could expect a great ransom for? She, sir. Yes, by all accounts she is very popular, galaxy-wide. The captain flinched a bit, but tried to cover it up with an eye-stalk scritch. A female, you say? Those are risky, shipmate. They could be somebody really scary's mother, or daughter, or little sister, or just a nice hot neighbor, or, His voice was starting to reveal a panic pitch of escalation, so he cut himself off. We need to be careful about who may come to look and to rescue her, is all I'm saying. The warlord nodded sagely. I understand. I'd say I did a really good job, sir. We should expect a truly phenomenal ransom payment for such A siren sounded in the wrong center, a proximity hyperjump in, relatively nearby, a human ship searching the area. The captain felt an itch of growing unspecified alarm. That happened sooner than I expected. There must be a massive scale mobilization going on to have seen one of those already. Full stealth mode. The lights dimmed and the sounds of various machines around them quieted to near absolute silence as 4 more ships hyperjumped in, scattered all around the ship. The distant ships began casting out powerful subspace scan waves, clearly intent on finding them. Just, how popular was this female? He asked as 12 more ships hyperjumped in and began scanning with every erg of their ship's power. In a now clearly expansive and coordinated scanning grid. I mean, she wasn't a beloved princess or something, right? No. It is a bit confusing. The human pop culture and all. The warlord replied uncertainly, slowly starting to realize the rapidly escalating threat all around them. The captain face tentacled in dismay. Please tell me you didn't kidnap a pop star. But you said to get someone important and well-known. I never expected such. Look, kid, this is one of those lines in the sand that we talked about. There are the rich, the powerful, the political, the somewhat obscure royalty, and then there are the beloved by literally billions of absolutely terrifying The Reaver war being shuddered as a subspace wave rippled through it, casting a sub-dimensional eddy currents around the hull that was then immediately slammed and locked onto by the heavy particle beam carrier wave conduits from every human ship in the area. The war barge was solidly locked onto and was utterly doomed. Any sort of truly nasty things of the human war inventiveness could be shuttled through those carrier wave conduits with considerable acceleration. But the first to arrive was a powerful, over-reverbed comms hail. Reaver war being, this is the Coast Guard cutter Fafo. You are to stand down and prepare to be boarded. There'll be no quarter given for any negotiations. The captain looked at his war boss with incredulity. By the unholy dark pulsar kid, just who did you abduct? The humans very rarely ever hail with such aggressive intimidation and fancy use of words. Someone famous and important, just as you commanded. The war chief was now quivering in bale, with his tip tentacles tucked between his legs. I never thought their reaction would be so. You will release the immortal Taylor Swift immediately and remand her to our custody. The captain flopped back into his eggshell-woven command basket and chuck. Oh, you absolute fool. You have no idea of the fan base that you have just awoken. End of story. There is a new legend on the horizon. Blueberry Cat has taken the T6 Patreon spot. Thank you very much, and I'm sure that I speak for everyone when I say that. I would just like to thank our T5 members, Lord Azrakel, Ambrose Cattell, Quantum Wednesday, Drexoon WRE, Blueberry Cat, Cam Maxwell, Casper Arnholtz, Bushmaster 177, and Leslie 517. Thank you very much.